Eagles. Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Football Friday edition of Birds 365 here on JAKIB Sports. Getting ready to preview Week 9, a full preview show today of Eagles versus Jaguars coming up this weekend. This Sunday at 4:05, I believe. They flexed it out of the night.
4:05, yeah,
4:05 CBS game. Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Football Friday, my man?
Yeah, 4:05 is better than nothing. Prefer 1:05, but we'll do it. We'll do it at 4:05.
We'll take a 4:05. They flexed this out of there. So Eagles Jags coming up this weekend. Jaguars sitting at 2-6. Eagles sitting at 5-2. It's the Doug Peterson contest where Doug will be back in the city of brotherly love, and the Eagles will be wearing their Kelly Green uniforms.
Kelly Green week.
A lot of people loved Kelly Green, Johnny Mac. I put on my Eagle polo today to kind of rep for the team a little bit, even though they don't need more free advertising, for crying out loud. They get enough of it, but I am doing it today. John, first couple things you're thinking about when you think about this game. I know this Jaguars team is beat up, but they've kind of been in some closer games than you would expect. They've had a couple blowouts, but they played the Texans pretty close. They played the Packers last week. They lost on a last-second field goal to the Packers, 30-27. I don't want to say they're a sleeper team, but I don't feel like they're maybe as bad as the 2-6 record shows. What do you think, John, coming into this game? Just your first couple thoughts when you think about this Week 9 matchup.
Yeah, I don't think they're I go back to the preseason and Shad Khan had mentioned that this was the most talented team they've ever had. And there were very high expectations in Jacksonville about this particular team. And obviously it's gone awry, and I keep going back to how close and how parity driven this league is. You saw the New York Jets last night. Well, I don't know if you wanted to watch Thursday Night Football, but for those who did, that's a lot of team, me included, thinking, all right, Aaron Rodgers might have one more run in him and might be a special season for the Jets. They have a great defense, yada, yada. They got Hassan Reddick, although it took a while. And things go off the rails. But you see, they jump up and they play really well, and they beat a team everybody thinks is good. It's been, by the way, a little bit of a disappointment for me because I thought they were going to, the Houston Texans, I thought were going to take the next step, but they just seem to be, they're good. They're not great. And it shows you how close this league is. So that's, you put that in your back of the mind with Jacksonville, but they're not healthy. That's the bigger part. Like if they were healthy, I would say, yeah, you got to worry about this game. I'm still picking the Eagles to win the game. If Christian Kirk is playing, if Brian Thomas is playing, if Gabe Davis is playing, if Travis Etienne is healthy and ready to go, that's some good players right there. Quarterback, a little bit of a disappointment from where people expected him to be, but he's not bad by any stretch of the imagination, Trevor Lawrence. And you start to say, yeah, at that point, I'd say this is no gimme. But the team that's coming limping into Lincoln Financial Field over the weekend, there's a point in the season where you say, no, things aren't working out for us, and human nature takes over. I think Jacksonville's there. They trade their left tackle, as we talk about, who's not going to be there next year, expiring contract, veteran player, but still very competent. Both of their guards are hurt. We'll see if they can play, and how well, if they do play, how well they play, and they're pretty good when they're healthy. Just hasn't worked out for Jacksonville. The one thing I would look at, everybody's on the trap game theme this week. I don't think that exists from a preparation standpoint, but from a human nature standpoint, obviously you have Dallas next and Washington after that.
Right.
And it might be a little bit to peek ahead and say, all right, we'll be in good shape for Dallas. So you worry a little bit about that. And I know talking to the players yesterday, the one thing that's still really good, despite the numbers and despite everything, is the edge rushers, Josh Allen, whatever he's calling himself these days, and Trayvon Walker. And you're back again with Fred Johnson. Same thing we talked about last week. Eagles use more max protection than they have in years in Cincinnati. I don't think they're going to do it as much in this game because they have respect for the edge rushers, and I think it's going to be more of the quick throws or attempted quick throws to get the football out. I don't like that. So, I'm starting to morph towards, this team, even when Jordan Mailata is back in Lane Johnson and they have this incredible luxury and they don't have to worry about that, I still think they should max protect at times because A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith are getting open. And if you give Jalen Hurts 4 seconds in the pocket like they did in Cincinnati, that's when you get some special stuff. But you can only do that in max protection situations. And the natural assumption is, well, we don't need to do that. That's an advantage. I don't know if it is an advantage because I don't think this team's as good when they spread it out with a bunch of receivers they don't look at anyway.
I know.
So that's where I am kind of with the offense. But these are all nitpicking. And this team right now is just not prepared to come in here and upset the Eagles, I don't think. That doesn't mean it's going to be a blowout again. That I could see a little bit playing down to the competition, maybe being a little bit more difficult than the Eagles expected. I could see that unfolding, but I can't see them winning the football game, barring a catastrophe in the turnover department, like +3, +4, something like that for Jacksonville. And very unlikely.
Yeah, no doubt about it. We'll see what happens this weekend. Eagles should be ready to play and should be able to move to 6-2. I want to welcome everybody in this morning on a Football Friday. Love Football Fridays. We got Flexing in there, Mike Fittery, Eduardo, Twiz, Jimmy Wen. What's up, Jimmy? RMP. Mike Fittery, I said you, man. Brian Fleming, good to see you. Joe Wilson. Callie Baby, what's up, Callie? Timothy Walker. Appreciate everybody in here this morning. Keith Johnson, my man Keith. Good to see everybody. Hope you guys are having a nice Friday. Hope everybody had a safe Halloween. I'm not a big Halloween guy at this phase of my life, but maybe when I have some kids in the future, I'll be dressing them up. But other than that, hope everybody had a good, safe Halloween. We will have an open up show today on the preview. So anybody that wants to drop in a super chat, anybody that wants to check into the conversation, we will be taking all of them later in the show, and we will dive deep into what to look for really this weekend and what to make of the Philadelphia Eagles on a 3-game win streak right now. Can they get it to 4? We will do all that. I want to remind everybody also to like the show if you're in there and you enjoy, because it helps us in a big way. We're only at 22 likes, I think Twiz just said. So that's pretty low. We got to get that up there. Appreciate everybody checking in. John, you just mentioned something about the Eagles offense there with the spread offenses. You think we should be running more 12 personnel than we do? I mean, if we're not using the third receiver much anyway, is there a better advantage to this team to get 2 tight ends on the field? Or if it's not 12 personnel, is it, I forget what it's called when you have a running back and a fullback. They went to that look with Van Sumerman. Like, should they be running
21? Yeah.
21, right.
They use a lot of 12 personnel. And now they've only had 2 tight ends up the past couple of weeks, but they've still played pretty significantly, Grant and Jack. So, they use a lot. It's not about the labeling of the players. It's about how they're playing the players. Like if you're having, 5 receivers go out on routes, that's what I'm talking about. Doesn't matter if it's John Dotson, Grant Calcaterra, or that to me is different. You can say, Grant's more effective than Jahan, so play more 2 tight ends, and they do. They play a lot of 12, just from a labeling standpoint. But I'm talking about like Jack Stoll is sticking in, and Nick Sirianni made a big deal out of it on the deep shot to Devontae Smith and him handling Sam Hubbard. I'm talking about how they're playing on the field. And if you're keeping, if you're only putting 2 receivers out into a route, or 3 receivers, 2 receivers, then somebody leaking out late. My mentality is AJ and Devontae, if you give them enough time, are going to get open anyway. And that's who you're obviously focused on. And that kind of worked a lot against Cincinnati. But I don't expect it to be a trend, especially when Jordan gets back. And I don't even expect it to be a trend this week because from people I are talking to, they're very hyper focused on the edge rushers, as I mentioned, and that means getting the football out a little bit more quickly. Yeah, I don't know if I'm in love with that, but we'll see how it shakes out. I mean, the Eagles have so much talent; they should be able to out talent this team. But yeah, I liked what I saw with those longer developing routes, and I think it's Jalen Hurts' strength anyway. So why not play into it?
Yeah, let's get into some of this game stuff, John. I think the Eagles have a chance here. I know everybody's been loving the ground game. I have. Me and John have obviously talked about that extensively on the show. But holy mackerel, if you want to look at some numbers on this Jaguars pass defense, everybody, and I know you hear a lot about it. Well, here's the numbers. The Jaguars pass defense, Johnny Mack, listen to these. Completion percentage, opponent 70.4, that's 28th in the league. Yards per pass attempt is 8.1, that's 30th in the league. Passing touchdowns given up, 17, that's tied for worst in the league. Interceptions, 2, tied for 28th in the league. Passing first downs, 108, 31st in the league. Pass plays of 20-plus yards, 34, that's 31st in the league. Opposing passer rating, 111.8, that's 31st in the league. I mean, they are just getting absolutely torched at every angle here. This is a big day for the receivers, and this is the big chance right here, John, to build the lead up early in the game, in the air, in the passing game, and hopefully have a nice, easy second half. Do you think that will happen, Johnny Mack? What do you expect from the passing game this week?
Yeah, I mean, their secondary struggled, to put it mildly, because they have, as I said, on paper, they should be pretty good up front. And the Eagles, as I mentioned, seem to be worried about the edge rushers specifically, but they also have really good linebackers. Now, Olakin's really good. Now he's been banged up. He hasn't played the whole season, but he's very Devin Lloyd is very good as well. But the safeties have been bad, really bad this season. Whether it's Andre Cisco or Darnell Savage or Antonio Johnson, they've all been just terrible. And then the corners haven't been great either. Our old friend Ronald Darby is still playing, still kicking around. Tyson Campbell's gotten back. He was hurt, and he's got some talent, and he's made them a little bit better. But that's your best defensive back. And, Darby's playing more, and Monteric Brown was playing more. Even Jerry and I mean, they're terrible in the secondary. So, yeah, I mean, on paper, they should be better up front than in the secondary by a wide margin. And that's the way it's played out. I'm sure the Eagles are looking at that. So I know that's going to upset people, but I don't know why it does. I mean, it makes sense to take advantage of the opposing weakness, and the opposing weakness is definitely the secondary.
Yeah, no doubt about it. We'll see how the Eagles game plan there. A couple other actually good matchups, John, in this game. I know it might be hard to believe as this Jags team almost feels like they're barely limping into this game. I mean, like I said, they had a nail biter loss to a really good team last week versus the Packers, but like you said, they were healthier in that game. So we'll see what they're able to do this week. Some key matchups though, John, is the tackles, Eagles tackles versus those two edge rushers. They got Trayvon Walker and they got Hines Allen. And I think when you bring up Fred Johnson on the left side, I'm not concerned about Lane Johnson, but Fred Johnson has another test this week with their edge rushers. They also have Josh Allen. Is that his name? Hines Allen. Is that what he goes by now? Yeah. They're two good players right there, and that's a tall task, I think, for anybody. What do you see with that matchup?
Yeah, that's what the Eagles are focused on when it comes to game planning is trying to deal with those two particular guys, and it's they are where they are defensively, so I don't want to overstate it, but if somebody's going to beat you, it's probably going to be Allen and Trayvon Walker. So I mean, they're both really gifted. They're both really talented. That's what we talk about. In the NFL, you can talk yourself into things because everybody's got really good players. Well, that's what you're going to talk yourself into if you want to say, oh, the Eagles are going to struggle. They're not going to be able to block Trayvon Walker and Josh Allen. I'm with you. I don't worry about Lane against anybody. I do worry about Fred Johnson. Now, I know everybody's going to point out, and that's where the context comes into it. And, they helped him a lot, which is good game planning against Cincinnati. And Cincinnati didn't have the complement that Jacksonville is. So maybe you feel comfortable helping more. On this thing, if it's Allen on that side, if it's Walker on that side, typically it's going to be Allen. But if you're helping too much over there, can Lane hold up? Yeah, probably. But 100% of the time, maybe not. And who knows? You only got to beat, the best edge rushers lose more than they win. It's like baseball almost, it's a game of failure. If you hit 300 in baseball, you fail 7 out of 10 times and you might be going to the Hall of Fame. If one of those happens and you break through and you get the strip sack and it's going the other way, that's how upsets are created and things like that. So the Eagles are very, very focused on Walker and Allen. That's where I think they figure, look, those are the guys who can beat us. And they'll be hyper focused on trying to stop them.
No doubt about it. Josh Allen, I mentioned him. He's a great player. Now, he has 3 sacks this year. But, John, this kind of ties into your conversation about how sacks don't always tell the full story. He had 17.5 sacks last year, which is pretty unbelievable, by the way. 2 forced fumbles and an int. This year he's got 3 sacks, but PFF has him 23 pressures this year, which is 8th in the NFL. So he's still obviously creating a lot of pressure on that outside. It'll be interesting to see. I would imagine he'll be lined up over Fred Johnson most of the game. We'll see how they manage that. That should be a good matchup to see.
Yeah, he's you mentioned he's 7th out of 113 edge defenders in his film grade. So yeah, he's pretty good.
Yeah.
And we said the same thing about Trey Hendrickson. So I think everybody's looking at that and saying, well, it was fine against Trey Hendrickson, who's a really good pass rusher as well. This guy's even better. And this guy's got a complement who's much better than what Cincinnati was bringing with Sam Hubbard and Trayvon Walker, who, number 1 pick in the draft a couple of years ago. Hasn't lived up to that billing, but everybody's aware how gifted he is. I'll say that.
No doubt. John, is Brian Thomas playing in this game?
He might. He's limited. Might be a little bit of a gamesmanship by Doug. I don't know how they handle it down there now. I do know when he first got hurt, they were saying 2 to 4 weeks. He's got some kind of chest injury. And all of a sudden they said, well, maybe he can play. And that sort of like when Kirk went down, because he's going to be out for the season, Christian Kirk, who's a good player. Eagles wanted to sign him, by the way, a couple of years ago. And he got too pricey.
Yeah, remember, John, do you remember that?
Yeah.
He signed and everyone, the whole NFL world exploded, and
Yeah.
now he's like the 40th highest paying receiver.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's a good player. He lived up to it. But he's out. And Gabe Davis is limited as well. He's their third receiver, and he's projected to be out by the guys I was talking to in Jacksonville. So we'll see how that shakes out. I think they might be trying to make the Eagles spread. I don't know how that helps, but we know NFL coaches. And all of a sudden, if you're down to Parker Washington and Tim Jones,
Oof.
that's what you're talking about if those guys can't go.
The island of misfit toys there, or whatever you want to call them. That's not very good. That's not very good right there.
And Brian Thomas has been great as a rookie.
Yeah, he has. And I would have assumed, like, is Slay going to play or no? You don't think?
I don't think so. Well, no. I mean, he's one of those guys. I saw him in the locker room, but he's not allowed to talk because he's not practicing. And he seems to be moving around pretty well. But I think, this is a situation where, and he's the kind of guy that doesn't need to practice to play. Like some young players, if they miss practice on Wednesday and Thursday, they're not playing. There's some veteran guys that they'll, as long as they get out there on Friday, they'll play. I don't think he's going to play. And part of it is because Jacksonville's so banged up at receiver. I think they're going to be cautious with it. And they think they can persevere without him in this particular game. And maybe it'd be a different case. But, I'm not a doctor. He's walking well. He's got a groin injury. I always talk about those soft tissue injuries with speed players, thoroughbred players, guys who got to run a lot. Those are much more serious than, a groin for an offensive lineman, whereas you can say, all right, he can fight through it. So my early guess is that Slay and Dallas Goedert are going to be ruled out today. But we'll know later this afternoon.
So that could be Isaiah Rodgers going up against Brian Thomas. Could be an interesting matchup there.
Yeah, and Isaiah was talking to Isaiah Wednesday, and he was talking like he was going to be the starter back on Wednesday. Now, it's no guarantee, but it's one of those things where, the players might not even know it, but they're giving away some information. But he's certainly talking like he was going to be the starter.
Yeah, what do you think of that? What do you think of him stepping in and being the starter? Do you think that's a big drop off for the Eagles, or you think?
Well, typically, yeah, but not against Parker Washington and Tim Jones. That's part of the reason why I think the Eagles are going to be cautious.
Yeah, I had an interesting debate yesterday, and I already know what side of this you're going to fall on. Actually, you'll probably laugh at the other side, but I have actually seen it around a little bit. I mean, let's just assume a world where Isaiah Rodgers plays really good football this weekend, whether he's playing versus Parker Washington or not. This team would never think about trading Slay right now, right?
No.
Yeah. Okay, that's what I said as well.
No. I know there's this weird disconnect. Not everybody, but a lot of people. Yeah, no, that ain't happening.
No, and it shouldn't happen. Not for a team that wants to compete for a Super Bowl. I don't see the reason in it, but people bring it up and then they get infatuated with getting the young guys on the field. And the other thing that's going into it is all the other young guys are playing good right now. And I think people think that just because everybody else is playing good, maybe they'll play good.
And Isaiah's played well in limited reps, and he made the big play last week. And Yeah, I mean, there's a reason Slay is Slay. There's a reason, we talk about how good Quinyon is. Look at the targets Quinyon gets versus what Slay gets.
Yeah,
Just a
teams still
number.
aren't trying Slay.
Exactly.
And by the way, that play he made last week in the end zone versus the Bengals, that was that was as good of a cornerback play as you'll see in the end zone. That ball was in their hands. He muscled that thing out of there. That was a really good play by Slay.
Yeah.
I don't think he got enough credit for that, actually.
Yeah, I mean, he's still he's still a big time corner in this league. 6-time Pro Bowl selection. In his prime, he's one of the best cover corners in the NFL. I always go back to that Justin Jefferson game where, he completely shut down the best receiver in football. Now, they were letting him be physical, so that's part of it. Sometimes, if you get an officiating staff that's going to be ticky-tack, you probably can't play that way. So everything comes down to game day and what's going on. But, you get players like that who's in a situation where he sees, all right, they're going to let us play. And then bang, you can take advantage of it. And he's just a veteran savvy, knows what he's doing, knows how to play. Yeah, I'm amazed at the disconnect between the way he's thought of in that building versus some of the people who think he should be
Yeah, I think a lot of it outside
for nothing.
Yeah, I think a lot of it outside is that they're not a huge fan of, the way he
Personality, yeah.
I don't know if it's his personality because I don't think his personality was ever at least it wasn't for me. I mean, I like his personality.
Well,
It's outgoing,
he
but
tends to champion other players.
exactly, and I
They
think
don't
that
like
part
him.
of his
Yeah.
personality rubs fans the wrong way, whether they're right or wrong. It does, and
And they're wrong, by the way. But yeah,
well,
he does tend to
I think they're
champion.
wrong about some of it, but I think it makes sense why people would not want to see you go on Michael Parsons' podcast after you lose a game. That makes sense to me.
Well, yeah. I mean, podcasts didn't exist back in the 70s. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe Bill Berge would have been going on.
I don't think so, but maybe.
I don't think so either. But, the world has changed is what I'm trying to say.
It
So
has. It has.
I agree with you. And I always go back to the famous Sports Illustrated cover of Julius Erving strangling Larry Bird, greatest rivalry in sports. And then a few years later, Bass Board and Magic Johnson, Isaiah Thomas kissing each other at midcourt in the NBA Finals. It's a different world. I get why people want them to hate each other, but they don't. The vast majority, and it's just a different generation. They handle things different ways, and a lot of them are friends. Just the way it is.
Yep, no doubt about it. John, let's keep rolling through. I think another really good matchup in this game, and this is one's a little bit more zoomed out, but Vic Fangio versus Doug Peterson, right? I mean, Doug Peterson's the offensive mind over there, and Vic Fangio. These are two dudes who have been around the game for a long time. What do you see when you think about that matchup and how those two might go up against each other? I think Doug is a uphill battle with a depleted lineup,
Yeah.
but
Well, yeah, Vic's going to win. But he's going to win. And the biggest reason I love Vic so much is because he's honest, and he'll tell you, it's not me. They're up against it, and guys are playing well. Guys are starting to buy in. Guys are starting to communicate. I go down to that fourth down play. Every time I watch it, I see something different.
the one where Cooper stopped
yeah,
Jamar.
and most of it's Cooper.
Yeah, I mean, the more I watch that, the more amazed I am by Cooper DeJean, who's following Jamar Chase in motion. Jamar cuts back the other way, then he goes back, and Cooper is just right there. That was
But if you
really
watch it again, you watch Isaiah Rodgers. We were just talking about Isaiah Rodgers because he gives a hand signal to Cooper DeJean to go over the top because they're trying to run a rub route with the guy who was with Isaiah Rodgers. And Isaiah was able to pick it up and hand signaled to Cooper DeJean to scrape over the top, and he got up a little bit more than he probably was going to, um, and sort of bumped the receiver a little bit, which allowed Cooper to scrape over the top and race around the edge and get to it. Because all you're trying to do there is out leverage the cornerback, and I've seen it. Most people will think about Jerry Rice in that play because it works so much for Jerry. For me, it's Chris Carter because they covered Chris Carter. They used to run that all the time in short yardage, and it's virtually unstoppable if you run it right as an offense. And you have a receiver like Jerry Rice and Chris Carter, but who are just, they're gonna all they're trying to do is get one step and out leverage the guy. And by the way, Jamar Chase, again, the new age, they broke what isn't broken. The whole thing is to get the flat, not to have looking at it and try to beat somebody in space. You're just trying to out leverage him to get a yard, 2 yards, get in the end zone,
Right.
box him out. That's the way Jerry and Chris did it, and it worked almost 100% of the time. So a little bit offensively, I don't like the way they ran it, but defensively, it was a phenomenal play by a young player. And Isaiah was really smart as well. So for those looking, and I know there's a lot of Isaiah Rodgers fans, give him credit as well. So yeah,
Is that an overhype, or is Isaiah Rodgers a good player? Like, do you see a long-term future with him in Philadelphia? Like, a lot of people think about life after Slay, John, and they're like, and even if not Slay right now, but picture next year or 2 years from now, and they say Quinyon, Cooper, and Isaiah. I don't necessarily see it like that. Now, I might be wrong. There are many people who are high on Isaiah. What do you think his future might be here in the city of brotherly love?
I think it's a really good backup. There's some size issues that will begin to show up if he plays a lot. So, I mean, I think the hope from the Eagles' perspective is it's Mitchell, Ringo, and Cooper. But that depends on the development of Kaylee Ringo. But that's who they want long term to seize that job. In life after Slay, he's got everything you want in an outside corner from a physical perspective. Long, unbelievably fast. Right now, he's way too handsy. You throw him out there for a game right now, he's probably going to get 3 PIs. Way too handsy. And you saw Isaiah Rodgers, and the one thing that Vic Fangio pointed out about the play, the interception, is he didn't panic. That's a big thing for corners. They tend to panic when the ball's in the air, especially young ones. Even when they don't have to, and they get the PIs downfield. He played that perfectly, again, against Jamar Chase, a really good receiver, and obviously had the pass breakup that turned into what Vic labeled as the lollipop for CJ Gardner-Johnson, but really good play by Isaiah. So that's 2 plays where Isaiah was tremendous. So people, expand that to be, well, he'll do that all the time.
Yeah, right.
Maybe he will, but you're talking about a 5'10", and they might be giving him a little bit, 170-pound guy playing outside corner in the NFL. Again, when the Mike Evans show up, what are you going to do? And people say, where are you going to travel? Well, the Eagles don't do that. There's a lot of reasons you don't travel. And by the way, very few teams travel consistently. But there's a few, and there's a few corners. But remember, when you're traveling a corner, that means everybody else has to travel, and they're playing out of their comfort zone. So there's always a domino effect. So you can say, well, Quinyon Mitchell will just handle those guys. And by the way, there's some teams that have multiple big time receivers, and you can hide people. So Yeah, there's some issues with him size-wise, and that's why everyone said, "Well, maybe he can project to the slot," because you look at him and say, "All right, well, he's gotta be a slot corner." Um, but he's better outside, and but I don't know if it's sustainable with his size.
We'll see what ends up happening there. John, last thing before we get to our first commercial break, and I want to remind everybody it's November 1st today, everybody. So the start of a new month. Thanksgiving's on the horizon.
Yeah, it's only 80 degrees. It feels like November.
Yeah, what the hell is that about, man? Last night I'm like, what the heck is going on? Normally I'm wearing sweatshirts.
It's like
Richie
training
Mack.
camp and practice yesterday, by the way.
I
It's
know
like
you were
training
down there,
camp.
right? Yeah, it was crazy, man. I don't know what the heck's going on with the weather. Richie Mack checks in. He says 55 days until Christmas. Now that's an update I like.
100
Richie.
days to the Super Bowl, by the way, today.
Is that what it is?
100 days, yes.
Nice, very good. Twiz, is your
That's what
birthday on
somebody
Christmas?
tweeted that out. Don't quote me on that. Somebody, I think Tom Pelissero tweeted that out. So I assume it's correct because Tom is very good.
55 days till Twiz's birthday. Twiz, are you a Christmas birthday guy? We'll see what he has to say about that. Appreciate everybody in the chat. We'll get to some supers or some comments from you guys later on in the show. John, last thing before we get to our first commercial break. Could this be another week for the edge rushers, kind of continuing their them getting going? They're playing up against Walker Little and Anton Harrison. Walker Little stepping in for Cam Robinson, who was traded. I think the edge rushers could feast this week. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know much about Walker Little other than he's a second-round pick. So he probably got some talent, but young offensive linemen tend to struggle. Anton Harrison's not exactly Lane Johnson on the other side. So should be a good. I just don't think the Eagles have volume guys on the edge right now. So from that perspective, we know what most fans want. They want sacks. So I assume that's the question. And I'm just not sure the Eagles have volume guys. They don't have, like, finishing is a thing when it comes to pass rushers. Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, Nick Bosa, every year they know how to finish. They don't have that guy. They had that guy. But he's he looked pretty good, by the way.
Yeah,
We're sitting for.
didn't he make a play at the
He
end?
made
of
a
the
play
game?
late. Now I didn't watch the whole game.
I didn't either. I
I don't have enough. That's but when I tuned in late, he seemed to be creating some pressure. Hassan Reddick, for those who don't know who we're talking about. Yeah, they don't have that guy. So if people are talking about sacks, which I assume they're talking about sacks, I don't think you're having a big. I just don't think that's the way the Eagles are built right now.
We'll see what ends up happening there. I do think the Eagles edge rushers have a chance, but I see what you're saying. I think no one's getting closer though, John. What do you think? What do you think of what you see from him?
Closer to what? Closer to being a solid rotational player, or closer to being TJ Watt?
Well, he's not going to be TJ Watt. I mean, stop that.
Well, that's what I'm saying. People are talking about volume sacks. I'm saying, yeah, he's getting closer to being a rotational guy you can count on. Who,
what about a Hassan Reddick? Closer to that?
No.
Not even close.
No. I mean, boy, people want to make big leaps. Hassan was pretty good.
Mean like a player that is going to get you something every game, basically, or at least create pressure, or at least be a presence on the football field at the edge. I don't necessarily mean 18 sacks because that's what Hassan got or whatever it was.
Yeah, I think he's turning into a solid rotational player.
There's that word again.
I mean, let's look at it. I'll pull it up real quick. Week 1, 14 pass rushing opportunities. Week 2, 11 Week 3 was down to 3 when he was struggling. Tampa Bay 15, Cleveland 7, and then the past 2 weeks where they're winning and they have more pass rushing opportunities, 15 and 14. You know, what? I mean, what's he going to do with 15 rushes? Is he going to get 5 sacks? I mean, what are people looking for? I guess is right now he's a rotational player and he's getting better. He's got to get up to Josh Sweat levels of playing time to even have a chance to be what I think you're trying to allude to. And correct me if I'm wrong. You got to play more, number one.
Yeah.
And you got to earn that playing time. Right now, he's earned his playing time to be 3-4, right, with Bryce Huff, which is a disaster for the Eagles, to be honest, because Bryce is supposed to be the guy, and he's not. But, yeah, so, I mean, can he get a sack a game if Jalen Carter's going nuts or, creating interior pressure? Sure, But is he going to, there's only so meaningful you can be with 15 opportunities. So he's got to get to the point where he's playing more before any of that can happen.
Good stuff there, John. We'll get to our first commercial break. Appreciate everybody in the chat today. We got a good crowd in here on this Football Friday as we get ready for the Week 9 game versus the Jaguars. 3 straight for the Philadelphia Eagles. I think they get the 4 maybe pretty easily. We'll see what they're able to do. Appreciate everybody in the chat. Hit that like button. We'll be back in 3 minutes on Birds 365. But before I do that, let me tell you about the great people at BetUS. You can see the scroll on the bottom of the screen. You can see the promo code up in the middle of your screen there. It's YouTube 150, and it gives you a 150% sign-up bonus on your very first deposit. You get 125% on your second and third deposit, so all up to $2,000. So deposit less and bet with more at betus.com. That's betus.com.pa. That's betus.com.pa. They have the fastest payouts in the industry, 24/7 customer support, and they'll even give you your own custom account manager to help you take some bets. So we appreciate them for sponsoring this 2-hour show here on Birds 365. Go and get your Saquon props in, everybody. Will Saquon get the jersey giveaway this week? We'll talk about that when we get back here on Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.